Hello there guys, Mark here. I hope you are well. In today's video, we're going to be tying the star knot paracord key fob. This is a fairly simple design using the classic decorative knots. Since this project is fairly small, it is an excellent way of practicing some more advanced or at least more challenging knots. In this tutorial, you're going to practice the Matthew Walker knot, the star knot, the crown knot, so many of essential decorative knots that you can apply to many a project. Here you can see an example of the key fob that we're going to be making. If I describe the techniques used, we have a loop done by twisting two cords together. Then we have a 4-stranded Matthew Walker knot, a 4-stranded star knot, a series of crown knots using an over 2 sequence, and another star knot with a crown knot at the center. So these are the techniques used, and they result in a nice looking and decorative key fob. As far as supplies go, our main supply is going to be 2 pieces of paracord, each 5.5 feet long, so about 1 meter and 65 centimeters each. Perhaps you're going to want to use a rope thimble in the eye or loop of the key fob. This reinforces the loop and protects it from wear. Now, this is completely optional, but it makes your project look a bit better. You're also going to need a tool to cut your cords with, so either a pair of scissors or a knife. And finally, a lighter is going to be used to meld the ends of our paracord once we have cut them. With these supplies ready, let's begin. To start my project off, I'm going to take my 2 pieces of paracord and I'm going to find the middle point of my 2 cords. To do this, I simply fold my 2 pieces of paracord in half and here at the top is the middle point in my 2 cords. I'm going to move up about 1.5 inches from the middle point. I'm going to either clip the 2 cords together to hold them in place, or I'm going to place a heavy object onto them so that they don't move. Now, using my left strand, I'm going to twist away from me, so towards the left side, then place my cord over the right strand. Using my left strand, I'm again going to twist away from me, so towards the left side, and over my right strand. And again, the left strand, away from me and over the right strand. And again the left strand, twist it away and over the right one. We're going to do this a few more times to get sufficient length for our loop. So away from me, over the right, away from me, over the right, away, over, away, over. Let's say that this is sufficient length for our loop. Remove your heavy object or clip and bring the 4 strands together. And this is our loop. After twisting your loop, pick up all 4 strands together like this and tie a 4-stranded Matthew Walker knot. Start with your first strand, pass it over the others, then around and into the loop. Like this. Take your second cord, pass under and through your first loop, like this. Then over the other 2 strands, behind them, and into the second loop. Like this. Take the third strand and again pass under and through your first 2 loops. Like this. Then over your last remaining strand, behind it, and into the third loop. Take the last remaining strand, pass through your first 3 loops, like this, and finally simply place your last end through your last loop. Like this. Now slowly tighten up the first strand, the second one, third one, fourth one. So first, second, third, fourth. They should line up here. First, second, third, fourth. Take your bottom strand, so the first one, and place it next to this one. Simply slide it over. Take the second strand, which is now at the bottom, and again slide it over. Like this. And finally, the third strand, again slide it over. Square everything up and slowly tighten it up. And this is the Matthew Walker knot. Now you can see that the loop is too big. To fix this, we're going to take one of the loops at the top and simply pull it in to pull in one of the strands in the loop. Then pull out the slack. Like this. Take the next strand and again pull it in into the Matthew Walker knot and tighten up. And the next strand and tighten up. And the last strand and tighten up. and this way you get a size that you need. To start your star knot, flip your project so that your strands are at the top. Take one of the strands and create a loop. Then, using the next strand in the counterclockwise direction, create the exact same loop. Like this. Take the end of your second strand and feed it through your first loop. Take the third strand, again create a loop and feed the end through the second loop. Take the fourth strand, again create a loop and feed the end under and through the third loop. Finally, using your very first strand, pass under and through the fourth loop. This is what you should get. So 4 loops like this. We're going to continue by tying a crown knot. Take one of the strands and pass it counterclockwise over the next strand. Then the next strand travels over the next strand. Then the third strand passes over the last of the strands, and the last of the strands passes into the loop created by the first strand. Like this. Now, pick up one of the strands and follow the next strand in the clockwise direction. So we travel under, then into the loop into which this strand is traveling into. Like this. Take the next strand and again follow the next strand in the clockwise direction. Under 2 and into the loop. And the third strand again follows the next strand under 2 and then into 2 loops. And the final strand, so this one follows the last strand, so the last undoubled strand going under 2 and into 2 loops. Like this. At this point, the star knot is almost tied. We're going to flip it over And we're going to take one of the strands, pass past one of the strands coming out of the Matthew Walker knot, then directly down through the center of the star knot. This doubles up this section. Take the next strand, pass past the next strand coming out of the Matthew Walker knot, and through the center of the star knot. And the next strand, again, past a strand coming out of the Matthew Walker knot, and through the center of the star knot. And the last strand, past a strand coming out of the Matthew Walker knot, and through the center of the star knot. Like this. So we have now tied a star knot that requires some tightening. We always start with one of the strands coming out of the Matthew Walker knot. We pull on it and run the slack through the star knot until we reach one of the ends. Then we pull the slack out. Take the next strand coming out of the Matthew Walker knot and repeat, removing the slack out of your star knot. And the next strand, again coming out of the Matthew Walker knot, run it through the entire star knot, and out. And again, a strand coming out of the Matthew Walker knot, like this. If you did this correctly, you should get a fairly nice looking 4-stranded 2-pass star knot. It's going to require some additional tightening, so I'm going to tighten it for a second time. Once you are happy with the look of your star knot, we're going to continue with a series of crown knots. Spread apart your 4 strands like this. We're going to be doing an over 2 crown knot. Take one of the strands and pass counterclockwise over the next 2 strands. Like this. Take the second strand and again pass over 2 strands. Again in the counterclockwise direction. The third strand passes over 2, so over 1, over 2, so into our first loop. And finally, our last unused strand is going to pass over 1, over 2. so into our second loop. We're going to pass under this first strand as well. So into our second loop under our first strand. Then slowly tighten up. And at this point you can inspect the knot. Each strand should travel under 2 strands. So this one travels under 2. This next one travels under 2. And the next one under 2. And the last one under 2. Tighten up firmly. And we're ready to continue. Take a strand, travel counterclockwise over 2, like this. The second strand, again counterclockwise, over 2. The third strand, counterclockwise, over 2, so into our first loop. And our last strand, over 2, so over 1, over 2, so into the second loop, under our first strand. Tighten up. You can always check that your strands are traveling under 2 strands to see that you have tied your crown knot correctly. And tighten up. And let's do one more for good measure. Take one of the strands, travel counterclockwise over 2. The second strand, counterclockwise over 2. The third strand, counterclockwise, into our first loop. And the last strand, counterclockwise over 2, so into the second loop under our first strand as well. Then tighten up. Like this. We're going to be doing these knots until we get a proper length for our key fob. Now I'm going to be counting the number of knots and I'm going to let you know how many I do. I lined up 9 crown knots with an over 2 sequence. I'm going to continue with a second star knot, which is tied exactly the same way as the first one. Spread apart your strands, create a loop, create a second loop, and feed the end through your first loop. Create a third loop and feed the end through the second loop. Create the fourth loop and feed the end through the third loop. Finally, our first end travels through our fourth loop. Like this. Continue with a crown knot. So we travel counterclockwise over one with each of the strands. The last one travels into the loop created by the first strand. Take one of the strands and double up the next strand in the clockwise direction. So under one, then into the loop. Take the next strand and double up the next strand in the clockwise direction. So under two and into the loop. And the next strand doubles up the next strand in the clockwise direction, traveling under two and into two loops. And the last strand doubles up the last remaining strand, going under two and into two loops. Like this. Then we flip our star knot over like this. Take one of the strands, pass past a strand coming out of a crown knot and immediately through the center of the star knot. Doubling up a strand. Take the next strand, travel past a strand coming out of a crown knot and immediately through the center of the star knot. And the next strand, past a strand coming out of a crown knot and immediately through the center of the star knot. And the last strand, past a strand coming out of the crown knot and immediately through the center of the star knot. Now all we need to do is tighten it up. Start with a strand coming out of the crown knot and run the slack out of the star knot. Always start with a strand coming out of a crown knot, run the slack out, like this. So like this, we have our star knot. Before I tighten up my bottom star knot for a second time, I'm going to add a crown knot at the top. Spread apart your 4 strands and tie a crown knot in the counterclockwise direction. So you take a strand, pass over the next. Take the next strand, pass it over the next. Take the next strand, pass it over the next. The last strand travels into the loop created by the first strand. Tighten up. Like this. In the last step, we're going to work the 4 ends on the other side of the star knot. First off, I'm going to push the crown knot into the center of the star knot. So just work it into the center. Basically, you want it showing in your finished piece. Then, we're going to work each of the ends to the other side. So like this. After you have all 4 strands on the other side of the star knot, you're going to want to tighten everything up. Tightening always starts at a strand coming out of a crown knot. So these bottom ones. Then you run the slack through the star knot. Then pull on one of the ends to bring the slack through the crown knot and out into an end. Always make sure that this middle crown knot is visible. It needs to stand out. Then trim the ends as close to the star knot as possible. Insert a rope thimble if you have one. like this, and use the lighter to slightly melt the ends without burning your project too much. You will want to go with your lighter through the entire project to stiffen it up a little bit. Oftentimes, I also use a plank to shape up these top parts of the star knot. The ends can then be tucked in to hide them out of sight. And with this, your project is pretty much complete. And there you have it, guys, the star knot key fob. The video turned out quite long since I wanted to cover pretty much everything in as much detail as possible. I hope that I made things clear enough and that you were able to complete the project. Thank you for joining me today, and I hope to see you next time as well.